These forecasts from the IMF overnight, they paint two very different pictures, don't they? There's the global situation, which is dire, and then there's the Australian situation, which is, well, it's not dire, but it's a bit better.
Yeah, look, it's improved, Pete, which is really important, and a tribute to the government and the central bank and the efforts of Australians here. I think that's really important. I think the forecasting exercise really at the moment must be like a dartboard. We're seeing some pretty wild movements, both globally and domestically. I think one of the things that we need to be really careful when we look at these forecasts, Pete, is the fact that actually this global pandemic is speeding up. The last million cases of COVID globally have only taken 6 days to eventuate. So the idea that somehow this thing's getting better, the health crisis itself is over, and we know the economic impact of that, it's just going to, it's really accelerating. So despite the fact that Western countries have moved through their lockdown phases, the number of cases are actually on the increase. So just got to be wary and be really cautious when we look at this data, but obviously some pleasing signs as far as Australia is concerned.
What are the political implications when you're talking about the IMF in this report?
Yeah, there's always it's always a good task to pour through the details of these reports and have a look at what the IMF and the World Bank say when it comes to policy prescriptions. And so what you see in the IMF's report overnight is that in the case of countries like Australia, as we see moving through the worst of the economic slowdown and coming out, is some caution from the IMF about moving too quickly away from that fiscal support. So in the case of Australia, job seeker and job keeper, and that obviously plays into the domestic political debate. We know Labor is constantly putting the pressure on the government about that and about resisting the urge to sort of pull that away in September. We know that if you were to pull JobKeeper and JobSeeker away at one hit, there would absolutely be an economic impact to that. And we also need to think, Pete, that the banks themselves have been keeping in place some very generous provisions when it comes to homeowners as well. So to have all those measures pulled away at the same time, you could see a very real additional economic impact. So some caution again from the IMF on that front.
OK, an announcement today from the government that $250 million will be spent on the struggling arts and entertainment industries. It's taken a while to get here. We had the Arts Minister on a short time ago who's satisfied with the amount of money that has been chipped into the industries. But what's your view on it? Is it enough?
Yeah, I would question the timing here, Pete. I know perhaps the arts sector is not necessarily that close to the coalition government, but we did see, like with accommodation and tourism, the arts sector was on the front line when it came to the economic impact of the COVID crisis. We saw cinemas and theatres shut down in March as governments moved to lock us down, and understandably so. So to sort of see 3 months later a $250 million package, hopefully there's more to come. And you were pointing out today the fact that there are a group of casual workers in the arts sector who have missed out on support. So we really do need to see some more support flowing. But look, good news and better than nothing, of course.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be more that's going to be coming on that front, because, you've got 645,000 Australians who are involved in that industry, and, it's worth so much money. And then you've got, like, I think it was yesterday on the front page of the Courier Mail, the theme parks in Queensland are going, well, we've been left out of all of this.
Yeah, and it sounds like they've actually missed out. I'm not sure the Cabinet's actually come to the party when it comes to those theme parks. And we know that once the borders open in Queensland, that's going to be a big draw card for Australians in the first instance as well. So, yeah, there's going to be some more conversations, presumably involving the Queensland government to get those guys up and running. But it's a big employer. We know it's labour intensive, just like those other sectors which have been really hard hit. So it does seem like the quantum's not quite right. So I'm sure the pressure will be on from the likes of the union in that sector and the arts sector more broadly for the government to continue to come to the party. All
right. Just noticing here some breaking news on our screens at the moment. Qantas placed into a trading hold at the moment, James. So very interesting to see what goes on there, as the CEO of the company had already said that there could well be changes. A lot of staff who may well have to lose their job, a lot of pilots who may be losing their job as Qantas goes forward. So I'm just interrupting our conversation with that breaking news that's just come through. So 6,000 job cuts, James. It's significant, but they had to stand down so many people a couple of months ago, Qantas, when this all happened, and now we're seeing the full effects of that.
Yeah, you probably see an announcement from Qantas today regarding an additional equity raising. I think that was where the speculation was. Again, this is another area of the economy, Pete, where the government did come in, admittedly much earlier, and put money on the table in terms of tax support to keep the viability of our airlines, understandably so, in place. Again, very labour intensive. But I suppose if we're looking at, Qantas being in significant difficulty again, whether or not that's enough and whether or not governments need to be involved in some way to keep them going. We know that there's the only way through this will be keeping a Qantas and probably a competitor like Virgin flying. It's in all our interests. So the government may need to come to the party again.